Better Angels. Better Angels is collaboration, folks. It's how we learn to talk to the Tea Partiers, how we learn how to talk to the other side. And our Deb, back there with Blue Gibbon, she talks about this all the time. If we start the conversation for positive conversations, we're going to find we have more things that we can agree on than what we can disagree on. And so we have to learn how to do that conversation, because 2020 depends on us being able to have these kinds of conversations. Now granted, you know, sometimes you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You know how that is. But I think we have to try. And even if it doesn't work, it might work for others, because we have a lot of folks out there that may be on the fence and need some really good conversations. So next week come and make sure we're not doing hissing or booing or nothing. Be really good, open ears, and learn how to listen. So yeah, I'm really excited about this. I think we can learn from all of this. So now I'm going to turn it over to Alberta. She's going to handle all of our announcements.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm so happy to be back. I can't tell you, they finally let me back in last night into the airport. I had been scheduled for Saturday and they called me and canceled. So I was supposed to be back Saturday, and what can I tell you, my broken computer. But it was working with Word, so I have this far in the schedule out, and I will get the new schedule out as soon as we can. I'm really excited about all the work that our scheduling committee has been doing. That's really exciting. I do want to tell you the name of my daughter's new job, because I was unable to remember it last time. My daughter, get this, is the interim director of restorative practices for the NCRC, which is the National Conflict Resolution Center. Whatever that is, she's got it for at least 6 months. And I was there for her first week of full-time work while she was getting used to this new full-time job. So thank you for letting me go. I really appreciate that. So thank you for doing that. Now, here we go with the important stuff that's going on today, which is announcements. We have people here who need to get announcements made. Can you pass this over to Mike?
The Ollie.
Louder. Right into it.
It's not on, I guess.
Make sure it's on.
No, that's what I'm trying to do.
Hello. The Ollie classes are starting up again in a couple of weeks. In case you don't know, they're fun classes through UC. I have catalogs here, and I hope you'll take a look if you haven't noticed it. And I have a little article here about yoga. Any yoga students, I have a little thing for you.
Today's the day.
Ollie, great place to meet new people and get new ideas.
Tonight at the North Side Action Group, Richard Asmus's group, David Pepper's going to be there. And Richard's made it very clear he's not allowed to do his stump speech. So he wants to have a real conversation with David Pepper tonight. So that's the 7 o'clock group over there in Northside at the Chameleon. And second of all,
Pizza's good.
there is a group out of Richard Asmus's group, excuse me please, that is working to have a training about how things work at the State House. And we're looking at the date of either February 23rd or March 23rd. So just kind of maybe pencil that in on your calendar about how things work at the State House. John.
Here's John.
Mike just mentioned Ollie. Actually, today is the day to start registering. Classes start in February. Really fantastic classes they have for adults. Also, 6:30 tonight is our monthly FCNL meeting, which is the Friends Committee on National Legislation. So, you might be interested in doing this because we lobby our local Congress people right here in Hamilton County. So not only do you lobby, but you learn how to lobby, which goes along with what we were talking about before, is how to talk to the opposition. That's all about lobbying. So that's what we do. And at 6:30 tonight, it's a Quaker Meeting House. It's very close. It's up on Reading Road across from Xavier on Winding Way. And that's a monthly meeting, second Tuesday night of each month.
Other announcements?
I think everybody can hear me. No? Who can't hear me? Raise your hand.
Liars.
I will move to minutes having its monthly meeting this Sunday at 2 o'clock at First Unitarian Church. I don't have the address in mind, I can't remember, I won't hold that. 538 Linton, 536, somewhere it's on Linton. We would very much like to have you come.
Other announcements? Other announcements? Announcements going, gone. I think we're up to Susan. Susan's going to introduce our speaker.
Hi, I'm Susan Needy, and I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Mel Cohen. He's a retired professor from Miami in political science, and he's graciously agreed to talk about the Electoral College.
Thank you, Susan. Let me say a couple things before I start. Yes, I was at Miami, but I was at the Middletown Regional Campus.
Can't hear you.
I'm at the Middletown Regional Campus. And I'm very proud of that, and I think people should know that. That I was not in Oxford, I was in Middletown. We have a very diverse population. At the time, it's an open access institution and a variety of people with different backgrounds. So Middletown is where I taught, and I was very proud of that. In addition, I listened to your announcements, and I think this would be a good time to start practicing no hissing and booing. Okay? This is a practice run for no hissing and booing, okay? Disagreements okay? All right?
Right.
So let me start here. I have some notes written out I'd like to use, so I make sure I cover things in a thoughtful way, basically. Okay. What do people pay attention to? Think about that. What do people pay attention to? Political people. Most people in the world probably pay attention to issues. They pay attention to health care. They pay attention to taxes, spending, immigration, reproductive rights, inequality. People pay attention to issues. Sometimes they're mostly domestic issues. Sometimes there'll be international issues. Foreign aid, troops, conflict. Okay? However, less frequently do people pay attention to the operation of institutions, to processes, and to rules, basically. Now, the people in this room, people here, you understand that policy does not take place in a vacuum. Policy takes place within certain institutions, rules, and processes. And it's critical to understanding them in order to understand what policies emerge, basically. So, for example, you understand gerrymandering. For most people, it's horribly boring. Okay, it's about numbers and lines and census and whatever. But people who really understand policy and want to impact policy have to impact gerrymandering in some way as well. So institutions and processes make a difference, basically, is my assumption. And given the results of the 2016 election, the Electoral College really came to the fore. where you had a popular vote divergence from the electoral vote. Okay? And when you look at the Electoral College, which is talk about today, it's a unique American institution. It's unique, basically, okay? A way of choosing a head of state and a head of government, someone who's both of these things. The head of state, okay, is a symbolic head, king, a queen, in some places, okay? The head of government is the one who impacts policy, proposes policy, pushes policy through. In our case, that's combined in one person. In that case, it's combined in one person, and we have a unique institution for choosing that one person. There are only about, I'd say a half dozen countries in the world that use some sort of an indirect election to choose such a leader who has both a head of state and head of government. Some of those places would be Botswana, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, Nauru, okay, we're right up there, Suriname, okay, and South Africa, actually, okay. So it's pretty unique what we do, and our electoral college is very different from other places, okay. And it's unique because we have voters select a body of electors, and whose sole function then is to choose the head of government and head of state, as well as the vice president. Again, I can't emphasize enough how ours is a unique institution. Unique doesn't mean you're the best, it just means you're different, basically. Okay? So what does it look like? What does Electoral College look like? Well, it's a system of indirect election where electors choose the president and vice president, and it's based on Article 2 of the Constitution, modified by the 12th Amendment, which gave explicit votes to electors for president and vice president. They had to vote for them separately, okay? And the 23rd Amendment, which gave people in the District of Columbia the right to choose electors. And this was in 1961. Before 1961, if you're in D.C., you couldn't choose electors. And why couldn't you not choose electors? Because you weren't a state. It was that simple. And so the Constitution needed to be modified so people in D.C. could choose electors. Okay. Now, the numbers of electors in each state is related to the population, but not identical population, but it's the number of senators plus the number of representatives. And so what happens, since you have senators and representatives, small states, okay, small population states, have sort of a statistical advantage, basically. They have more electors than they would have based on their population. Smaller, rural states will have more electors that would be based on their population, and that's because the Senate is used in counting the number of electors, basically. Okay? So there is a bias. There's a bias in the system, okay? Now, the electors themselves are chosen in a manner decided by the state legislature. The state legislature decides how electors are to be chosen. It doesn't say in the Constitution, here's how you choose the electors. It's the state legislature that does that, okay? And since about the 1830s, early 19th century, since about the 1830s, electors have been chosen in states by popular vote and a plurality. Okay? Since about the 1830s, electors have been chosen in virtually every state except two. Okay? And which two states are those that don't choose by plurality system? Yes? No idea. Oh, okay. So,
Ohio.
Nice try, Ohio. Okay, let's try this. This is a good. Where does Warren Buffett come from? Omaha, and what state? So which state does not have plurality winner take all? You got it. Okay. The second state is Maine. Okay, I'll explain both those states in a second. So the current system is, if you win a state by one popular vote, one vote, you get all that state's electors. And this is a decision made by each state itself to have that system. It's not mandated by federal law, it's not mandated by the Constitution, it's a choice made by each state. Now what happens in Nebraska and Maine, okay, is that each congressional district, okay, you choose it, you can vote on an elector in that district, and overall, whoever wins the state gets 2 votes, basically. So it's more of a proportional in some way, basically. And we'll get back to this in a second. Okay? So when you go vote, you're not voting for the president and vice president. You may think you are, but you're not. If you look closely at the ballot, you're voting for electors. You're voting for electors who say they're going to vote for somebody. You're not voting for president and vice president, okay? And in most cases, okay, electors vote for the person they say they're going to vote for. We'll get back to that in a second, too. In most cases, electors will vote for the person they say they're going to vote for. In most cases, okay? Now, once the electors will cast their votes, okay, in their states, okay, on the first Monday after the first Wednesday in December. First Monday after the first Wednesday in December, the electors get together in their states and cast their votes, basically, okay? And this is federal law, okay? It's not in the Constitution. It says, the law says the electors get together, and normally it's in the state capitol. Normally in the state capitals. And if you're really interested in stuff like this, well, you can actually go online at C-SPAN and see the electoral vote in different states. You can see who's voting in Ohio, basically, okay? It happens at the state capitol. You can actually see it happening. So it's not a big secret, okay? Now, what happens then is that the electors vote, and then on January 6th, and this is sort of custom, the votes are counted before a joint session of Congress that's presided over by the President of the Senate. President of the Senate, okay, oversees this on January 6th. Other question, who's the President of the Senate? The Vice President, whose name will not be mentioned. Okay? The Vice President is the President of the Senate, oversees, okay? And if someone gets a majority of the electoral votes for president, okay, he or she becomes president. If they get a majority for vice president, that person becomes vice president. Now, what happens if someone does not get a majority? It's majority, not plurality, majority of the electoral votes. What happens is the president you don't get a majority of electoral votes for president. That decision then goes to the House of Representatives. Okay, if you don't get a majority for the Senate, for the vice president, right, goes to the Senate. Now, in the House, when you vote for president, you vote by state. You don't vote as individual. So whatever the Ohio delegation says, that's one vote. Okay, so clearly the party balance within a given state becomes somewhat relevant. Okay, it becomes very relevant. So representatives, you vote by state. In the Senate, on the other hand, you vote by individual. In the Senate, for vice president, you vote by individual, basically. Okay? And that's the system. That's basically our system. We have electors, okay, are chosen in the states, they cast their ballots, they counted in Congress, and then we know who wins. If we don't know who wins, then it goes to the House of Representatives and the Senate. Okay? Sounds pretty, in some ways, simple. Okay? It may seem simple. Anyway, it could be more complicated, but anyway. So, the question then becomes, two questions then become, like, why do we do it this way? Okay? And secondly, so what if we do it this way? And in other words, who wins and who loses? And third, should we do anything about it? And if we want to do something about it, what should we do? Okay, so why do we have the system we do? Okay, and there are a variety of reasons we have it. Part of it is just simple practicality at the time. At the time of the convention, people wouldn't know about candidates nationally. There were no candidates nationally. Candidates were from states or regions or whatever, so just knowledge, voter knowledge. I mean, just trust the voters aside, which is clearly relevant in some way, but just the practicality of understanding what was going on, okay? In addition, there were competing interests, as there always are, okay? There were large states, small states, slave states, non-slave states. So you had a whole bunch of things you had to be concerned about, okay? And at first, in the convention, the idea was for the national legislature to choose the president. That was the idea, basically, okay? And this was rejected by the convention eventually because it made the president too dependent on Congress. If the legislature elected the president becomes dependent on Congress, basically, okay? Now, there were proposals for direct election. Okay, James Wilson, Pennsylvania, made a proposal for direct election. That, because of all these other things, it didn't take place. Okay, it didn't take place. But, so we were looking, what's the alternative? You're gonna have to do direct election. You're not, you don't want the legislature to do it. I mean, some people thought, well, maybe have the state legislatures do it. They choose the president. That didn't sound like a good idea either, because you become dependent on the state legislatures then. So what they did was develop a unique system based on political bargaining, basically, okay? And there was a body of electors who would choose the president. Now, it was assumed that there would be state level and regional candidates, and that ultimately the final decision would be in Congress. So the idea in the beginning was the states would nominate, no one would get a majority, and Congress would choose. So you got states, and Congress involved, basically. And that was the bargain. It didn't work as planned. Surprise, surprise. Why didn't it work as planned to have the states nominate and then have Congress choose? It was very simple, something people in this room know about. Political parties. Political parties enabled national candidates to develop. And once you have national candidates, you'll get a majority in the Electoral College, essentially. So it's thanks to political parties, okay, that we've moved away from having the House and Senate choose, basically, okay? Now, and so in practice, okay, we get a clear winner most of the time. Not all the time, most of the time. 1800, we had a problem. There was a tie between Jefferson and Burr, and eventually that was broken in the House, okay? That led to the 12th Amendment, where you said you had to vote for a president and vice president separately, because in the 1800s, they just voted for two people. Whoever got the most became president. Whoever got the next most became vice president. Bad idea. Okay? Bad idea. That's why you had a tie. Okay? 1824, we had 4 people running. Andrew Jackson got the most popular votes, but John Quincy Adams became president because Henry Clay said, let's make a deal. Okay? And so there was a deal in 1824. 1876, okay, Rutherford Hayes, Republican, had about 250,000 votes fewer than Tilden, but he won. Why did he win? There were disputed electors in about 3 or 4 states, southern states basically, disputed electors. Congress set up a commission saying, who are the real electors? Okay, because 2 different lists were submitted. Congress said, who are the real electors? And then all of the electors basically went to Rutherford Hayes, the Republican. But there was a deal. There's always a deal. The deal was, all right, Democrats, we'll let you become president, you end Reconstruction. That was the deal. Reconstruction ended in the South in 1876 as part of the deal to have Rutherford Hayes become president. Okay? Now in 1888, Benjamin Harrison got 90,000 fewer votes, but he beat Cleveland. That's what happens to Cleveland sometimes. Okay? That's what happens. Okay? For most of the time, okay, we have until recently no case where popular vote winner was losing. We didn't have it since 1888, basically. Okay, and then since we had 2000, we had a problem in 2000. Okay, when I say we, that means people in this room. We had a problem. Okay, other people didn't have a problem, but we had a problem. And then in 2016, we had a problem. We still have that problem. Okay, happening. Okay. Okay. However, in addition to where the person who got the most votes didn't win, we've had 19 times where the winner did not receive a popular majority. We have 19 times where whoever won the Electoral College did not win a popular majority. Okay? Remember Bill Clinton? Well, okay. He's one of those examples. He's one of those examples. As soon as you get like a third party running, okay, Ross Perot, whatever, you're not gonna get a majority. So 19 times, okay. And if you want to know how much of the popular vote Lincoln got, 39%. 39% Lincoln became president, basically, because he's able to carry the Electoral College. Okay. Now, in addition to the whole popular vote, electoral vote issue, what about the behavior of the electors themselves? Okay, what about their behavior? We had a number of times in history where electors said, I changed my mind. Okay, in some cases it's okay because their candidate died. Okay, and your candidate dies, you vote for somebody else. Okay, but since 1960, we've had about 16 or 17 cases, what they call the faithless elector. And 2016 was a record. We had 10 what we call faithless electors, okay? 3 of these people were replaced because of state law, basically. And so 7 votes did not go to Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, okay? I think Trump lost 2 and Clinton lost like 5 votes, basically. All right? Now, only one time, 1796, did a faithless elector make a difference. That's been a long time. And it's only happened in Ohio once. That was 1812. No big deal. Okay? And however, 30 states, 30 states, including Ohio and D.C., require their electors to pledge, I will vote for this person. I will vote for this person. Okay? Now, the Supreme Court has said, okay, the pledge is okay. Pledge is okay. But we're not sure about enforcing it. Okay, the Supreme Court's never dealt with enforcement, okay? So who knows what would happen, except the last election, we had states that had these rules, and they replaced 3 of their electors, and that's how they handle it. But this is sort of an undecided thing, basically, okay? Fine. So, who wins, who loses, okay? I think it's important to understand that all systems have biases. Bias is not bad. That means you sort of lean one way or another. You favor this, you favor that. We see the word bias as being bad, basically. The news has bias, this has bias. We all have biases. We live with them. Okay? Some things we favor, some things we don't favor. That's, that's sort of the nature of things, basically. Okay? So who wins, who loses? The current system, the smaller states and rural areas have an advantage, basically, because each elector represents fewer people. Okay? However, the large states have an advantage because they have more electors overall. Okay? Now, with the winner-take-all system, what you have is that those states that are highly contested, it's a plurality system, win by 1 vote, you get the state. Okay? You win by 10,000, we win by 100,000 votes, no one's going to care, basically. Okay? So, closely contested states have an advantage. People, the candidates campaign there, and policy results come from that. Policy results come from the fact that candidates focus on certain states. It's like Ohio. Okay? That's why the people are, everybody else in the country is mad at us, but we love it because they're all here and paying attention to us and whatever. So about a dozen states, that's where the campaign takes place. Okay? And it's not going to take place in California because it's going to go Democrat. Okay? It's not going to take place in New York. Okay? It's going to take place in battleground states that have enough electors to make a difference, basically. Okay? If you're a little peewee state, it's not going to make such a difference in most cases. But those battleground states have an advantage, basically, the winner-take-all system. Okay? And so, in addition, the winner-take-all system, okay, helps certain populations. Okay, winner-take-all system, electoral college, it helps concentrated minorities, not concentrated minorities in some cases. If you're a group that can flip a state one way or another, people are going to pay attention to you. Wisconsin, Michigan, okay, Pennsylvania, African American vote. Okay, let's be very honest. Okay, there are groups can flip. Groups that vote solidly can flip it, basically. Okay, that happens in some states with Jewish voters as well. Okay, if you're able to vote as a bloc and move states one way or another. Okay, now also what happens is that groups that are dispersed, you're a group that's dispersed, you're going to be disadvantaged as opposed to a group that's concentrated. Okay, so for example, Ross Perot received 19% of the vote in 1992, but 0 electoral college votes. 0. Why? Because his people were spread out all across a bunch of states, basically. Okay? George Wallace, 13.5% of the vote, 46 electoral votes. Why? Because people were concentrated in certain states, basically. So candidates that have concentrated support will benefit through the Electoral College. People with dispersed support will have a disadvantage in the Electoral College. Okay? So, you got some biases. Okay, why the system's there, how it works, biases. What should we do about it? Okay? About it. So, well, you can have direct popular vote. That comes to people's minds. Okay, direct popular vote. And this is supported by, Democrats, large numbers of Democrats. Republicans aren't so happy with it, okay? Direct popular vote. The problem with going to direct popular vote is straightforward, the Constitution. You'd have to amend the Constitution. What are the chances of amending the Constitution to get a direct popular vote? 0. About 0. Because you need 2/3 support in Congress, each house of Congress. And what proportion of states? 3/4 of the states. Good luck. Now it's passed Congress. In '69 it passed the House. It hung around there for 10 years. And then went to the Senate. The Senate passed by a majority, but not the 2/3, basically. That was '79, the last real attempt, basically. Over the years, it's been like hundreds of things submitted to do it, but to amend the Constitution is really difficult. And if you have direct popular vote, how do you know who wins? Okay? Do you want, like, whoever has the most votes to win? And that means, there are 10 candidates, someone can win like 11% of the vote. You don't want that, so plurality, you probably want a majority. And if you get a majority, you have a number of candidates running, you're not going to get a majority in the first round, okay? You have to go a second round, which some countries do. Okay, France is an example of that, basically. France is an example of that, direct popular vote, first round, second round, okay? That also gives a chance for a third party to get in that second round in some cases. France found it out with the National Front, the far right. They made it past. One of the other traditional parties made it in the final round for president, but they got clobbered, okay? So, another thing to do, you could go proportional and drop the winner-take-all like Nebraska, Maine, basically. The problem there is, why should a state do that? I mean, Ohio, everybody's paying attention to us because we have this winner-take-all. Why should we change, It may sound like a good idea, but why should we change? Because we win by winner-take-all, okay? This also reflects district bias, and in many cases, this proposal has been opposed by Democrats and supported by Republicans. So the proportional thing. We also have something called a national popular vote, okay? And this is a compact agreement among states. It says, okay, whoever wins the national popular vote, and right now the proposal is plurality, okay? Whoever wins the plurality of the popular vote, we're going to cast all of our electoral votes for that candidate. Okay? So if Ohio, if Ohio entered, we'd not in it. If Ohio entered, even though we would support a Republican, if the national winner is a Democrat, our electoral votes go to the Democrat, basically. In that particular case, there are about 10 states that approved, like this is a good idea, okay? And they're all Democratic states, okay? They're all Democratic states because we think that'd be a good idea, okay? If you look at the 2016 Republican platform, they said, this is a very bad idea, we don't like it. It was bad enough they put it in their platform in 2016, we're against this national popular vote because it's not a good idea. They didn't say it wasn't a good idea, they said it was unconstitutional, all kinds of stuff, okay? Now, I'm almost done here. Now, the current system itself has certain appeal to some people. It emphasizes the importance of states and the idea of federalism, some people say, okay? There were populations who were in swing states like this system, okay? Particularly concentrated minorities in swing states like this system, okay? Less densely populated areas may have relevance because they're overrepresented in a sense. So, now, thinking about what you'd like to do, there's things to think about before favoring or instituting a reform. Okay? Changing rules may be attractive when things don't go your way. However, you never know how the rule changes may impact in the future with a different landscape. Let me read something here. In 2015, some Republicans, including Republican National Committee Chair Reince Priebus, spoke in favor of Nebraska's system similar to Nebraska and Maine. Reince Priebus said, how about this proportional stuff? Okay? This is same from the 2015 article I'm quoting here. 2015 article. While some Republican officials warn of a political backlash, GOP lawmakers in, and listen to this, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are already lining up behind proposals that would allocate electoral votes by congressional district. Ooh, they didn't get a good read on what was going to happen in 2016, did they? Nope, they sure didn't. So you never know what the world's going to look like. When you change the rules, you never know what that world's going to look like, and you never know if you're going to win, you're going to lose, and what's going to happen. And that's sort of unnerving. Thank you. Is there a microphone? Go down for questions?
Yes. So you say it doesn't have much of a chance passing with the constitutional amendment. Suppose that, and everybody in this room has heard innumerable ideas that have to do with how our democracy works, independent of issues like healthcare and stuff like that. Process, as you were expressing. Suppose we took, ours is get big money out, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Suppose we took all of these ideas and put them in one amendment. Our country has one of the shortest constitutions in the whole world, okay? Other constitutions are updated on a periodic basis. We're stuck in the past with rules that are so abstract that they don't affect what's happening on the ground. What do you think of that?
Okay. No hisses and boos, right? Okay. The first thing to understand that that's absolutely true. Our Constitution amending process has some rigidity, it's very rigid. It's one of the most rigid in the world, basically. Okay? After the first 10 amendments, we had 17. Okay? And 2 of those were for prohibition, repeal of prohibition. Okay? So, it's very difficult. And the way we've managed that difficulty, and whether we like it or not, is through the courts. The courts have been able to interpret and expand the Constitution. That's one thing that removes that rigidity, basically, would be the courts. Okay? That's one question. On issues like money and whatever, other things we're talking about, okay? It could be money, it could be gerrymandering. So the courts would be a possible option depending on who's in the court at the time. Secondly, it sounds like what you're saying, and I'm not again, it's going to be a very complex amendment. Okay, it's going to be a very complex amendment, and that kind of stuff is probably better for legislation if we can get it than amending. And once you're in the Constitution, you're stuck. You got it, basically. And I'm not sure of something that complex. Most of the amendments we have are simply one issue types of things. Some people get the vote, some people don't, whatever it may be. Complexity is probably not one of the best things for a Constitution, I particularly believe, that's all.
Thanks for the crash course on Electoral College.
Crash!
How is it that Hillary lost with 3 million more votes? I know it's happened 19 times.
No, well,
Is it because
no, it didn't happen 19 times. It happened 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
Okay,
19 is a minority, didn't have the majority of the popular vote. So how'd Hillary lose? With the most, okay. So there are a couple things. There are a couple things that are happening. The Democrats are fairly concentrated in urban areas and certain large states, basically. Okay, and they have an excess. They waste a lot of votes. In other words, they have excess of what they need. So Hillary won California by 4 million. Okay, she could have used that 4 million someplace else, but that's. So there's excess votes in certain areas the Democrats have a disadvantage at, okay? Secondly, what happened, and I alluded to this, in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, altogether, like, she lost by about 75,000 votes. If turnout had been different in those states, okay, a total of 75,000 votes in 3 states. So we're not talking one state. One state, like, was it 10,000? Was it 10,000 in Wisconsin or Michigan? That's all you would need, okay? And I'm not going to cast dispersions on anyone, but the issue of the African American vote became very important. And that's one reason you're seeing Democrats saying, hey, wait a minute, we got to get people out. We got to get certain populations out. They're really working in that hard, basically. So that became the issue in those 3 states. I'm not personally convinced that that this whole election was a bunch of white guys who are unhappy. Had 75,000 votes changed, we'd have a completely different interpretation of the election. Like this. Okay, I'm not sure that helps you or frustrates you.
Hurry up before I forget my question.
That's on you.
Would it be easier to make changes on the state level on how we pick our electoral college and do it that way?
Yeah, well, yeah, you can do it. You can do that, but the part of it's a battle between Republicans and Democrats, and part of it's about what's the best advantage for, like, Ohio. And as long as Ohio's a swing state, you get a lot of attention. Ohio benefits tremendously. And it'll be how will we get the? If you look where the campaign money goes, where the campaign visits go, where all the ads go, how many calls did you? I mean, in 2016, how many phone calls? I mean, 2000. You get phone calls. If you live someplace else, you're not gonna get these phone calls. Okay. It becomes an advantage. It becomes an advantage in that it does impact policy after that. Your state, the state that people pay attention to campaigns will need, because they're going to have to come back. They have policy advantages, basically. I mean, there's research there's research that shows this, basically. I'm not just saying it because I think it's a good idea. I'm saying there's research that shows if candidates pay attention to you during an election, there are policy benefits that go your way, basically. So, and then when you decide, not just about Ohio, but the Democrats going to benefit, or Republicans going to benefit from this, they need to sort of figure that one out. Okay, it seems to me, and sometimes it depends on the context. You know, with way Democrats might benefit now, will they benefit in 15 years? I mean, I don't know. So it becomes it becomes tricky is what I'm saying. I'm not saying don't try, don't do it. I'm saying it becomes tricky, is what it is to
I
me.
hear two questions.
When a state like California has the same number of senators as Wyoming with minimal population, it's the consequences are that there's uneven, to say the least, representation. So what are the odds of changing that? How can you approach that?
Yeah, see, if you want to abolish the Senate, I mean, or make the Senate proportional, or reduce the term of senators to 2 years, you're going to have a lot of pushback from people. It seems from those particular states. It seems to me. Okay. Well, let's. Well, I guess somebody else. You want to respond to that? Is it wrong? Or are you going to ask a question? I'm not sure. What about? Is it wrong?
I think one should understand the history behind it. It was the Great Compromise when the country was formed, that small states would be given population, and so you're asking for...
It's on.
It's on?
Oh, okay. The history is important because people, it's very hard once it's historically in our bloodstream to change everything. And the states that have 2 senators, why would they even, everybody wants it equal. And so maybe we could just do it through senators, I don't know. But it's like, it has historical roots, and that has to be appreciated also.
Something else is that, in addition to those historic roots, that is important is that they're different bodies. Okay, you talked about the Tea Party. Tea Party grew up in the House. Tea Party grew up in the House. 2-year terms, smaller districts, more responsive to constituents. Tea Party. Okay, Senate represented 6-year terms, represent states, less impacted by Tea Party. So when you change the nature of a body, you change the nature. You change a body, and so you change it how it operates essentially. Now you may think that's what I said. What we still should have. We're willing to take that risk to have a. Why not just have one house then? If you're going to change the Senate, why not just have one house? Would be an argument some people would make. But institutions operate in a context that it's not, separating one out is hard to do. It's hard to do in some cases, okay? Would be my response. Any question?
In 2016, I got this information from the Ohio Democratic Party. A decision was made among the Hillary campaign that because Ohio, they really wanted to focus on those concentrated areas. So they focused on the large urbans. Because traditionally, the large urbans would win things 80-20, and then they could carry, you know, when they would be losing 40-60 out in the rurals. But they could not deal with the fact that they lost the rurals 70-20. So was that a bad move on their part that they chose to do that?
They lost.
Yeah, well, obviously. But they used, I mean, this is what you talked about, you know, using that concentrated hope that they would be able to turn it, but they didn't.
No, they didn't. And I have to look at Ohio, the turnout in various areas as well. The urban turnout by various populations. But that was you know, Obama carried Ohio, okay? Obama carried Ohio. And so I think we make decisions. Were they wrong? I mean, they lost, okay? And we had to make another decision. Would they have won? I don't know. It's hard. It's very hard to say at a given time. It was pretty clear toward the end that Ohio was not going to.
This is just a hypothetical. Hey, it's probably far out. It's far out. But anyway, like you mentioned, California having all those Democrats. Is there any way, like California could, let's say, propose they have 3 states. They have Los Angeles area, San Francisco area, and the other, like, proposed to become 3 states. And the same for like New York, New York City and New York. Could they, I mean, is it impossible to form new states?
Right behind you, Trump.
My memory, don't quote me on this, my memory is that for a new state, Congress must approve. There's a congressional aspect to that, basically. And if this were to happen, that means to get through Congress, and even the people in California, I'm not sure what they think, what they want, I have no idea. But it would have to go through the Congress to be approved, is my understanding from the Constitution. Yes?
It's bad enough that the Electoral College works the way it was intended, but when it seems to me that with the issue of faithless electors, that we're basically operating on the honor system. And so I have some questions about, you said that certain faithless electors were replaced by states.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how, they obviously didn't make their intention known at the Electoral College meeting where they were casting votes. Somehow they knew in advance that these people were going to be faithless, and the states were able to replace them. I don't.
That's my understanding.
That's
That's my understanding of those particular states. And faithless electors is rare, not unheard of, okay, but it's rare because there are repercussions in those particular people. So if you are let's say a Hillary elector and Hillary wins Ohio, you say, I'm not going to vote for Hillary, okay? There are going to be repercussions in your state against you in the party. You're not going to be a party leader anymore. These are all usually party leaders. They're members of legislatures, county officials. They're not just people, they just find a Democrat. Let's go to Kmart and find a Democrat, okay? No, I mean, these are people who are committed party people generally, basically.
But if they decided, if a certain number, if it were a close election in the Electoral College, and a couple of people decided, well, I don't care about the consequences to my personal life, they cast their votes contrary to their instructions or their pledge, and there is no enforcement, as far as I know, about that, and that election would be determined.
So let me, so we're doing hypotheticals. Let's add a hypothetical to that. Let's make believe that happened. And let's make believe that in addition, let's make believe the next 2 elections, whoever wins the popular vote loses the Electoral College. Which could happen again and again as Democrats are moving and whatever. This could become more common. Okay, I said it's very hard to amend the Constitution. Okay? But if something more like that were to happen, what you're proposing, or a couple elections where the popular vote went the other way, I think the pressure for a constitutional amendment would become significant. I think it would become significant because then we have a record of how this thing's malfunctioning, basically. I thought it was going to happen after 2000. I was sure after 2000 something was going to happen, but I was wrong. Okay? And so if it happened, nothing's going to happen after 2016, but if something happens the next election, I think we may see things change, basically.
In the meantime, could states take people out of the equation to avoid the faithless elector and make the results automatic?
Yes.
Or would that require a constitutional amendment because people would no longer be involved? It would be somehow the state from a distance dictating where the electoral votes are going to go.
My understanding would be you need a constitutional amendment to do something like that. That's my understanding, because your electors are to be chosen, and just saying automatic, there are no electors. And once you eliminate the electors, that's a constitutional issue, is my understanding.
So speaking of hypotheticals, with all that you know, what do you think would be the best and fairest election system?
Fairest election system. No, I mean, it's a tough question. What is fair? I think If we were to write the Constitution today, in other words, start from zero, I think we'd have direct popular vote. I think the case for it is fairly powerful, basically. Now, whether that's the best, but I think that's the most acceptable to a large number of people, and it makes logical sense, and it would make political sense, even though there'd be some opposition. I think if we were to rewrite the Constitution today, that's what we would have in some way, where there'd be a runoff. In other words, you had to get a majority. If you don't get a majority, there's going to be a runoff. But there'll be implications from that. Campaigning would change, parties would change, number of parties would change. So does that make it the best system? I don't know. It makes it a system that we would use if we had to choose today, is my guess. My personal thing. I worry about third parties a lot. Okay, I worry about third parties, and to be honest with you, this is just me speaking personally, and not as an academic or former academic, as a human being, or maybe as an academic. My concern today, I know we focus on the executive a lot, for good reason, basically. My concern is the political party system we have may be collapsing in some way. And without parties, you don't have democracy. Okay, it's that simple. You need parties to aggregate people, you need parties for campaigns, you need parties for policy development, you need parties for Congress to operate. And without parties, so I'm very concerned about our party system, in addition to the autocratic demagogue who's in the presidency. Okay, that's my real long-term concern, is the party system, basically, and what strengthens that party system, and I don't know. Wish I had a good answer to that.
Back here.
I have read that we cannot have majority vote because minorities would be oppressed. But aren't minorities oppressed anyway?
Well, listen, when you have majority rule, there's always going to be a minority, okay? You just don't want that minority to be the same each time, forever, okay? I mean, there has to be a chance for that minority to become a majority. And then that's what you need. But if that minority is always the minority, then you have some serious trouble, it seems to me, in holding a system together. And because of that, if there's something that seems like a permanent minority, trying to hold them into the system becomes relevant. Okay? And as someone from Nebraska, highly a rural state, small population, I mean, we want to be held in. Okay, so we want to always lose. Okay, and so that becomes somewhat relevant to me personally. That becomes relevant to who's going to be the minority, who's going to include them. Yes.
Oh, hi. Following up on minorities and exclusion, the recent cases in the strike in California, Los Angeles, the teacher strike, as to teaching civics and American history. I think there was one write-up in the Washington Post maybe about a young woman who was complaining that her American history textbook was copywritten in 1990, which was before her birth. But if there was more education of civics and history, might there be not as great a need to reform the Electoral College? And also with the majority voting, or the majority vote being determinative, do we have the amount of money in the United States, and we're not Europe, we don't have that many small countries. Can we really do 3 national ballots for the presidency in the United States? I mean, we're barely funding what we've got.
When I speak about minorities, they're numerical minorities, not necessarily racial, religious, or ethnic minorities. So they're numerical minorities. It could be farmers, or coal miners, or anybody. Okay. As far as the money to pay for it, I suspect the money's there to pay for a national election. I don't find that to be, that probably wouldn't be a reason not to have it. So we spend a lot of money in the States now doing the same thing, so that's my view.
So, last question. Mike has conceded his question to Martha.
Here's the big one. You may not want to talk about it, but what needs to happen for Democrats to take it?
You're asking me the question you should have the answers for. No. This is you should have the answers for this, not me. Okay.
In terms of voting, where,
Get out.
in terms of the state's votes, the Electoral College,
Get people to vote. Get your people to vote. Get your people out to the polls. It's not just about web pages, about ground game. It's about having people turn out, having a reason to turn out. Give people a reason to turn out. Help them turn out. I think that makes a difference. If people don't have a reason to turn out, or they think they can't make a difference, convincing people they can make a difference, that their vote matters, that this is a big election, and let me say something else here. You're having next week. You're going to have whatever the Better Angels, no streamers, whatever. Just the way it was described, there's a problem. I do not believe you describe things as being two-sided. Issues are multifaceted. There are not two sides on the abortion issue. There are 10 sides on the abortion issue. And seeing 10 sides helps nuance the argument, helps have a broader appeal. It's not simply two sides of an issue. It's much more complex. And unfortunately, what elections do is simplify things to such a degree they become meaningless, basically. Okay? You're for the wall, against the wall. Well, it's more complex. Okay, we're for security. This is what we want to do. Some people agree, some people don't agree, whatever. Issues are complex. And I think understanding that complexity is probably helpful in recruiting people who may not be traditional Democratic voters or haven't voted, basically. That's my view.
Mike would like his question after all.
Do you think Bernie would have defeated Trump?
I don't know. You're trying to predict turnout. You're trying to predict turnout, and I don't know what that turnout would be, basically. If you're saying that Bernie could appeal to the white working class voters who went for Trump, I mean, I don't know. He might have appealed to them, but then he might have lost other populations. It's very, very hard to predict those kinds of things. I mean, I wish I could give a better answer, but I mean, I don't know, and I think we will. I don't think so. I think he would have had trouble. I think he would have had trouble too. Yeah, well, Hillary had trouble, but 3 states, 75,000 votes.
Tell me they weren't bought by some foreign government.
I'm not going to tell you anything.
He is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today. So he gets to have lunch now.
Another woman could
Any more announcements today? Thank you for coming. You are a wonderful group. You have great questions. Keep them coming. Thank you for coming.